Welcome to the Vision Builder podcast. I'm your host, Esteban, and this is a special episode. First, it's going to be our first episode in English, so that's going to be awesome. And second, the guest that we have here today is somebody that I've known for a while, that I admire, and I know his story would be really, really powerful, and it can help anybody that may be thinking about relocating to Costa Rica. You definitely want to check out this podcast and this episode. All right, Chris, how are you? Welcome to the
I'm great.
podcast.
How's it going, my friend? Thanks so much for doing this in English because my Spanish is terrible. Still, even having lived here for 8 years, going on 9 years, my Spanish could improve a little bit more. But thank you so much for accommodating and having me on the show.
No, of course. Thank you for being here. I mean, I was trying to think like when we first met. I know we have a lot of common with volleyball, but do you remember exactly when was it that we first met? Was it a tournament?
No, man, I think I reached out to you because there were a few people were like, because I started the volleyball club here in Puerto Viejo, and people were like, "Oh, you got to reach out to Esteban, like reach out to Esteban, like he's." Yeah. And I'm like, who is this guy? I've never seen this guy before. And then lo and behold, like there were a few people even like disconnected, like, cause I'm somewhat connected in the Canadian volleyball community where I'm from originally. And so I had asked around, I was like, you know, this guy, Esteban, he played for Costa Rica, where, he was on the world tour, or like he played at a couple of tour events. And like people were like, yeah, we know that guy. He's he's a big Costa Rican guy, Jack, like whatever. Yeah. And then, so then I reached out.
Yes,
Yeah,
now I remember.
and I think that's our history, man. That's
Yeah,
how it
that's how we
started.
connected. That's awesome. So, Chris, just so somebody listening can kind of understand a little bit of your background, and here in this podcast, we talk about the vision, right? What was your vision before you moved to Costa Rica 8 to 9 years ago? How was everything? You're from Canada, right? Can you tell us a little bit about kind of what that was at that time, when you're in Canada thinking about coming to Costa Rica? I'm sure there's a lot of decisions, to be made. And in Costa Rica, had you been here before, or what made you come to Costa Rica?
Man, it was a fluke. So the way it worked was, a lot of my life, the majority of my life, is centered around my family. And when we were younger, when I was in my 30s, Roseanne, my wife, and I, we have 5 kids, all mine, all hers, and we were raising them in Toronto. And Roseanne started homeschooling the kids for one reason or another. We don't need to get into like the reasons for that, but like she was homeschooling the kids. And I have a problem with authority. So I wanted to start my own business because I didn't like working for somebody else. So I was able to mentor under somebody, and I started my own business on the internet, online. I was one of the first online fitness professionals way back in the day, like in the early 2000s. Now I say that only because that was the impetus for us to want to relocate, not really relocate, but try to live a life of where we had a little bit more freedom of schedule, and that we weren't bogged down by, not necessarily society, but it's to escape the weather, because the weather, we're living in Toronto, and in the winter, the Canadian winters are not nice. Like you can get up to like minus 40 sometimes. And so because I had the freedom of schedule because I was running an online business, and Roseanne, my wife, had the freedom of schedule because she was homeschooling the kids, and the kids had the freedom of schedule because they were being homeschooled, we thought, why not? Why don't we just, for 3 months out of the year, go somewhere else? And so we met up with another homeschooling family who we were friends with, and we didn't know where we wanted to go. And the wife of that family had suggested, well, there's a place in Costa Rica that I really want to check out called Puerto Viejo. And so we're like, okay, well, we'll go anywhere just because like we just want to get away. And so the first time we came to Costa Rica was in 2014, and we stayed here for, I think it was about 6 weeks with this other family. We rented a house in Puerto Viejo, and yeah, and so we stayed there. And we were like, oh yeah, it's nice. It's nice here. It kind of, in all honesty, because we're on the Caribbean coast, it kind of reminded me of home, like Toronto, which is weird to
Really?
say, but
Yeah.
yeah, but all of my friends growing up, because of the neighborhood that I lived in, the area of the city that I lived in, all of my friends, my best friends, were Caribbean. And so
Okay.
I was very familiar with the culture. Like the culture is really like, it's based around food. It's very jovial. People are incredibly friendly, and they're straight talking kind of people. Like, and so I felt like it was home. Like I was interacting with like the people that I grew up with, which was great and was a really good feeling. So that was in 2014. And so then we came back to Toronto. We lived our life or whatever. We were just there for 6 weeks. And then the following year, we wanted to do it again. But this time we wanted to do it ourselves because we wanted to get a little bit more into the culture and into like the local scene and everything. We decided to come back to Puerto Viejo. We stayed for 3 months this time. So almost for the entire winter.
Just you and
And
Roseanne, or the whole family?
the whole family except AJ. So our oldest she was in university in Spain at the time. So it was me and Roseanne and four of our kids. So that was in 2015. And at the end of that vacation, at the end of that 3 months, it was like maybe 2 days before we left, we met a family and they were like, oh, you should meet this guy. He's selling property. And I'm just like, listen, I like Toronto. I don't want to leave. I'm happy with where we are. And Roseanne was just like, well, like, it's not going to hurt to check it out. Let's just go check it out. So then we checked out some property and Roseanne saw this piece of land. And then she's like, we're standing in the middle of like the jungle. Okay. You know how it is here on the Caribbean, right? We're standing in the middle of the jungle on top of like this hill. And she like starts crying. And I'm like, what is happening right now? And she's like, I love this. And I'm like, oh, here we go. So I took out my wallet. It was like one of those things where we just put a deposit on a piece of property with the
Right there,
understanding
right
that,
then.
right, it was just a deposit though. And we were
Right,
like,
right.
maybe we could keep it for retirement or like something for the kids or whatever.
Okay.
So it was just like, okay, so we put a deposit in, and this is where the story, takes a turn. Okay. Now, prior to this particular vacation in 2015, we had just renovated our house in Toronto. And we had told the kids, this is our forever home. We love it here. This is where we want to stay. Like, this is where it's going to be renovated. Their bedrooms. We've renovated our room. We've renovated the kitchen, like a big renovation. So then we leave for Costa Rica, come sign for this retirement property that we're going to have. And then we get back to Toronto and it's May and it's snowing still. And so that kind of got the wheels turning and everything. And like, what are we doing here? Like, it's snowing. It's so terrible. We had such a good experience in Costa Rica. And so then Roseanne and I, the way we live our lives, like we make decisions. Like we never hum and haw and just kind of like sit back and overthink things. We kind of act and make things happen. So it was like the end of May when we put the house for sale, our house in Toronto for sale. And we were like, we're out of here. And
So
yeah. And
well,
so
that's a great story. I've known you for a long time. I kind of had an idea, but now kind of listening to it, it really makes it that more powerful. But I think there's a couple of things that are really interesting, Chris, because like you said, first coming to Costa Rica, it wasn't your first time. I think a lot of times people have asked me, right? I want to move to Costa Rica, the typical like what areas, and I always say, come check it out. And I think you did that not thinking you were going to move here, but I think it definitely helped you, the fact that you had come once before, and then it wasn't until your second time that you ended up putting a deposit to buy your future house, right? You never expected that. So I think that makes it really important, for anybody relocating, I think anywhere in the world, right? It's really just kind of trying to check out the place, kind of really learn a little bit about like Costa Rica. For people that may not be familiar, the Caribe, which we call the Caribbean side, is North Caribbean, right? So it's a different culture than most of Costa Rica. So it was
yeah.
also something different, but it was kind of cool how you had, some history with that kind of a culture that kind of tied you to it, right? Did you
No, I
explore
loved
other
it. Like I
areas
said,
or
it reminded me of home.
okay.
No, it's funny. It wasn't until about 2000, just before the pandemic, that we started to explore more areas of Costa Rica. And every time, the different places that we would go, there was just something about the Caribbean that really spoke to us. So we're super happy with the decision that we made of all the places in Costa Rica to move to. The Caribbean was like, this is it. I mean, the beaches are beautiful. We're familiar with the culture. The food is great. The population and it's like what you said, like the Caribbean culture in Costa Rica is a little bit different than the culture of the rest of the country. So it just really spoke to us. But that you make a good point. If anybody is looking to relocate, I really suggest that you try to spend an extended amount of time. Don't just come for vacation, right? Like you have to try to get integrated into the culture a little bit more and experience a little bit of like what daily life is.
Yeah,
To
because
see
people
if that's
come and
gonna
they see all the beautiful Costa Rica, but there's a lot of things that you need to experience. The rainy season, right? You know how the rainy
right.
season is.
Yeah.
I mean, I
Yeah.
say
Yeah.
like come check out the rainy season, which I like, but if you're trying to buy property, if you're trying to relocate, there's a lot of things that come with Costa Rica that you need to experience. So with you, and then now that you've been here almost 9 years, you kind of know that. But at the same time, I think it's another thing really important that you said, Chris, you just got to make a decision, right? Because a lot of times people just think about it too much. And at the end of the day, if you want to relocate to Costa Rica, it'll be a good decision. Things will come up, nothing will be perfect. And I'm sure you had, a lot of difficulties, but you took that decision. And then how long till you sold? Did you have to wait to sell the house before you actually make the move, or how was that process?
No, our house sold quick. We decided to sell in May. We put it on the market the first week of July. It was sold by the second week of July. That was the house in Toronto. Yeah, so it was a hot market at the time, and it was, like I said, like we had just renovated it, so the house was like, it was showing really well. It looked really nice. It was in a really great neighborhood with good schools, so there was no problem selling that house at all. Yeah.
So actually
So
renovating it for it to be the forever home ended up being a positive thing because it sold, and it probably, it was a win-win all around, right?
in the end, yeah, it was. I mean, the kids. I mean, I'm not gonna lie to you. Like when we relocated the kids, like they hated us for like the first 2 years. Like it was really tough for them. But I mean, in the end, they're better people for it.
No, I can relate to that because growing up, I moved around a lot. I lived in 6 different countries. And so growing up, we moved from Costa Rica to Brazil to Thailand. So as a kid, I wasn't very happy, because we were just focused on, our friends or school. But at the end, I see your kids now. I mean, they're worldly, they travel around. They've been in different countries. I'm sure they love it now. And, it's kind of hard for them to kind of see that. But you guys made the decision and then you moved to Costa Rica and you bought the lot, right? Because that's another thing. You didn't buy a house. You bought property like lot, right?
Bro, we bought jungle. Like I did not have it was Roseanne that had the vision. I did
Right.
not have the vision. I was like, we're spending this money on like it's jungle. Like we're in the middle of the jungle right now. But she had the vision of what it was. So yeah. So it was a lot. I mean, it was a lot to build the house. There were things that we wanted to do that we weren't able to do, things that, there was a lot of compromise. We initially thought that we were going to go completely off grid and do things very sustainably, but we just realized that that wasn't feasible for what we wanted. And so there was a lot of back and forth. I mean, the thing with our house here, I find is that like we're always under construction. Like there's always something, when you're never going to have it perfect, like there's always going to be something that you need to improve on or something you have to fix. So that was one of the things that I've noticed since moving here.
Right. So at the beginning, you had to maybe rent somewhere how long
Yeah.
did it take to build the house
It
before you
took
moved in?
it took 8 months to build the house, but we didn't like after we closed on the land. Like when we broke ground to build the house, it took about 8 months. But like a lot of the process of acquiring the land and changing, getting the paperwork done and everything, that was a lot of it. Like that wasn't included in the 8 months. So from the time that we decided to move here to the time that we moved into the house, that took about, I'm going to say that took about a year, a little bit over a year. Yeah. 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 So we were renting while
Okay.
that was all happening.
So you're
Yeah.
renting. Now, one of the good things too that you mentioned, I think it made it easier that your kids were homeschooled, right? You have 5 kids and 4 of them, right, were the ones that made the trip to Costa Rica.
That's right.
And being homeschooled, I'm sure that made it, you don't have to be in Puerto Viejo. I don't know what the school system is, but I think that made it definitely easier to kind of make the transition. And how is that? I mean, I'm actually curious. Maybe after the podcast, you can tell me more about it, but I think homeschooling is a great thing. I don't know. I'm sure you both are experts on that now. How was that experience with the kids? I mean, was it difficult to kind of homeschool them in a different country?
Not so much. I mean, we just like we tried to transplant. The only difference between homeschooling here and homeschooling, well, here initially and then homeschooling when we were in Toronto was that we didn't have a community. So as much as, people say, homeschool kids, they're not socialized, they don't, it's difficult for them to get along with other kids or whatever. That wasn't true in our case because we had a community in Toronto that we were very close with, like with a bunch of homeschooling kids and homeschooling families. So the kids had that. When we moved to Costa Rica, that was the biggest challenge, was how are we going to get the kids socialized? How are we going to get them to speak Spanish? How are we going to be able to do that? Because we weren't going to put them in the school system. Actually, we thought about putting them in the school system only just to learn the language and to make friends, right? But we found a different way, and that's kind of how the volleyball club came about. Initially, we put the kids in as many programs as we can. So They all played football. We enrolled them in like the football program locally. My youngest
Football,
daughter,
soccer, right?
soccer. Yeah, yeah,
There's
I'm trying
no
to stay with the
American
culture.
football here.
No, no, no. There's no, yeah. So they would play soccer. And then our youngest daughter, Michaela, she did telas. So she did a lot of the aerial silk stuff and made friends through there. And then weirdly enough, one of the other things that we did was eskrima. And so there was like a big eskrima following because there was an instructor from San Jose originally that moved to Puerto Viejo and started an eskrima club. So three of our kids did eskrima and did really well with it as well. And so that's kind of how they learned the language and started to create friendships and relationships and everything. And then, of course, I started the volleyball club, which was really the impetus for them to find community and create a community. And that's what he did. So it was kind of like what I was saying at the beginning, where, you know, when we sold the house, it was just like we made the decision to do it. Like the volleyball club was one of the things where it was like, okay, I coached volleyball when I was younger. We used to take all of the kids to our oldest daughter's volleyball tournaments all over the country, like all over Canada, all over the US. They used to come. And it came a point in time where the kids were like, okay, so when do we get to play club volleyball? And there was no facility here in Costa Rica to be able to do that. So I started the volleyball club for two reasons. Number one, why? It was primarily for the kids, but to be able to create that community and that social aspect for them.
That's great. So yeah, and so now talking about volleyball, you going into volleyball, that's kind of, both of us have a lot to do with volleyball. I also played volleyball, went to college in
Man, you're the
volleyball.
LeBron James of Costa Rican volleyball. That's who you are.
Except that you're the only one that knows that or says that. Well, maybe. But yeah, here in Costa Rica, volleyball, it's not the main sport. Soccer is the main sport. But there's a really nice volleyball community, and we have beautiful beaches. But even though we have so many beautiful beaches, there isn't that much like beach volleyball in the coast. It's actually in the city, which
Yeah,
is interesting, right? And so you moved to a place, Puerto Viejo in the Caribe, which I think it has one of the best, beautiful beaches in Costa Rica because they're like white sand,
great.
and it's just the beaches are amazing in Puerto Viejo. If you're listening to this and you haven't been to Puerto Viejo on the Caribbean side, definitely recommend it. Chris can tell you. So you have these amazing beaches, right? And now you started a beach volleyball club, right? That's kind of what you're telling me. And how did that go? Like, how did that start and that community? And I remember when you started that, and now, I mean, it's evolved to something a lot bigger. But how was that experience?
The thing that I found with starting things like that is just consistency. So when I started the club, it was just, it was for my kids. So I had, it was for like, we had basically, okay, first thing was consistency. So we would show up every Tuesday and Thursday at 4:30 for every week. Tuesday and Thursday, 4:30 was reliable. That's exactly what we did. We had two bamboo poles and like a crap. I took rope and used them as lines, right? And that was it. Just because my kids wanted to play volleyball, so it was Tuesday and Thursday at 4:30 every week, and we would just show up. It'd be my four kids. We would have at least four because four of my kids were playing. We would
Right.
have at least four kids, and sometimes there was six, sometimes there was eight, but it was just like reliable. We were there every Tuesday and Thursday at 4:30, and we just showed up, and we continued to show up. And initially, it was just playing and having fun and stuff like that. And then other kids wanted to learn, so then I started to coach a little bit and run clinics a little bit. Not even run clinics, but I would just like be there at 4:30 and coach them and teach them proper technique and make sure that the kids had experience and just had a good experience overall so they would want to come back. So initially, like with that club, it was just the consistency. And I remember talking to one of the kids here he's Salva. You and I know Salva.
Right, of course.
And Salva is 24 years old now, 23 years old. And I remember him saying, he was always worried because there had been situations where foreigners would come and they would start something and then a better opportunity would come about, or they would just move away and then that was it. So I remember him saying he always had this anxiety, like he didn't want to get too involved because he was afraid that it was going to go away or something like that.
Yeah,
And
Salva's a local kid, but he's not Costa Rica. Yeah, he is Costa Rica.
his mother's Costa Rican. His dad is originally from California, but had been living here since like the late 70s, I think, when he moved here. So Salva is Costa Rican, I mean, his
Okay,
dad
so it's
specifically.
interesting. As a local kid, he was just kind of maybe used to seeing things come and go, and
Yeah.
for so he wasn't really. So that's interesting. But so you were being consistent for your kids, but also for the community, right? Because you started getting a lot of response from that.
There was a lot of response because we were just there every Tuesday and Thursday. Like we were always there no matter what. And then before you know it, like, and then I wouldn't even say that. Like I was there for the kids on Tuesday and Thursday, but there was like a small, 4-on-4 little beach volleyball crew that would come out and play and stuff like that. And so they would be playing as well on that same net, just not on Tuesday and Thursday when I would do the stuff for the kids. And then that community also started to grow. And then, like we always talk about like setting technique in volleyball. Like it's very distinct. This is how you know that people have experience playing volleyball because they know how to set properly. You can see it with their hands and the motion of that. And so when I started doing that, like people were just like, okay, so maybe this guy knows how to play. That started to attract more people that knew how to play, and that's how the level of the whole program started to elevate when it started to become okay. These guys know how to play. Let's start to up the level. So eventually, we went from 4-on-4 adults to like going 2-on-2 and building the community that way. And then I was teaching the kids how to play 2-on-2 beach volleyball as well, and it just kind of yeah, and that's how the community got built.
So this is great because the whole story, you moving to Costa Rica, building the house, and then you start this as a way to kind of get your kids to do activities outdoors, meet other people, right? Obviously, you enjoy volleyball, you
And the
love it,
language, yeah.
and the language. So, like I said, if anybody is listening to this and thinking, all right, I want to move to Costa Rica, what are some of the things that I'm gonna have to do? I mean, this could be definitely something that any family can also do in their way, right? Not only coming to Costa Rica, relocating the house, but in terms of the activities and things they need to do with their kids. I mean, it kind of just evolves, and there's a lot of great communities in Costa Rica that people move here. So I think you took advantage of what you had, right? The beautiful beaches, it's kind of easy to do. And so listen, Chris, I'm going to tell you, before you came to Puerto Viejo, there wasn't like a beach volleyball community or a beach volleyball culture. And now sometimes I see there's like, I don't know how many people, there's like lights now over there. And it's just been amazing. I attribute that 100% to you, really, because even though people play beach volleyball there, and I think I might have gone maybe very few times, but that community has grown thanks to Chris. And now you may not be involved in everything volleyball, but nobody was really doing this 10 years ago, because I was, before you came, Puerto Viejo wasn't a beach volleyball like town or had this activity. So that's awesome. Congratulations to that, because I'm sure a lot of people are benefiting from that.
First, thank you. I appreciate the compliment. I don't know if it was me. I think, like I said, like I was doing it kind of selfishly, but like I think the advice that I would give to anybody that would want to relocate that's congruent with my story and what I did with the volleyball program was like you have to be proactive. You have to want to get involved with the community. I've heard so many stories of people relocating from North America, from Europe, and then eventually just like keeping to themselves and becoming a recluse or like just kind of staying within a certain group. And I think where I'm from and where a lot of people are from, and based on your experience of being so worldly as well, like there are so many advantages that we can have to helping the local community with our experience and how we've lived our lives. And so that was I just didn't want to come to this country and be a consumer. I wanted to really be able to give back and be a part of the community and create a community. And so that's really the reason that I did it. It wasn't so much like to try to create this whole beach volleyball culture, but it's nice. Like it's good. And I can see that now how much it's grown since we started the program. So but thanks
Yeah,
for
and
recognizing that, man.
no, and Chris, and to be honest with you, I mean, your mentality, you were from Canada, you had a lot of experience, with athletes, right? You can you've worked with athletes, top athletes, you've seen programs in Canada, volleyball programs, which are, top level programs, or, how the sport is done in countries like Canada. So it's not like you were just coming here and saying, hey, how am I going to do this? You actually brought that experience with you and you shared it with the community, with your kids. And I think that's one of the cool things about Costa Rica. A lot of people come to Costa Rica and actually, like you said, try to give back in how, they've done it, things back home. And it's really improved in a lot of cases, areas in Costa Rica. And I think that's awesome. And I do give you 100% props, because I know before you were there, beach volleyball wasn't it is what it is now. Now in the national beach volleyball national tour, there's so many teams from the Caribe. And that only happened when you started, this whole club. So yes, 100%, Chris Lopez.
Thanks, man. Thank you. I appreciate it.
But now I wanted to ask you, in terms of that experience that I just mentioned, in terms of volleyball, etc. Back home, your business was, tell us about your business. It was a fitness. You work with athletes, or how did you translate, that to Costa Rica when you moved? Because that's important, right?
So, I started as a personal trainer in Toronto, and I was lucky enough that I was able to hook up with a very reputable studio that catered to some of Toronto's elite, like a lot of business people, CEOs, sports people, and stuff like that. I got into the fitness industry primarily because like I was an athlete myself growing up and I was obsessed with physical performance, like mainly for myself. And so that's how I got into the fitness industry. And so when I was in Toronto and I was working with this company, I happened to also be, the company hooked me up with one of the owners of the three of the sports teams in Toronto. A really affluent, well-to-do family, very generous family that owned the Toronto Maple Leafs, the Toronto Raptors, and the Toronto FC, which is their soccer team, their football team. And so I was a trainer for that family, and I also had a strength and conditioning background because of my sports backgrounds. Over time, I developed a really good relationship with the owner and that family. And they asked me to come in and consult and do a little bit of work with the professional teams there. So I did, kind of just like in a learning capacity because they brought in their own strength and conditioning staff. But I was kind of always around, learning about human performance on a higher level in terms of like team sports and stuff like that. So that's how my sports performance background started to develop and all of that. Now, all the while, I'm also sports performance in Canada professionally isn't as lucrative as it would be in the United States. So I still had to find other means of income. And so I still had to
Why is that?
maintain I think it's just I think the NCAA has a lot to do with it in the US. I think a lot of money is poured into the NCAA and into collegiate sports. And that kind of starts the whole culture and is the foundations or the underpins of the culture there. Whereas in Canada, like universities in Canada, high performance as they are, they don't give athletic scholarships. So a lot of times Canadians lose a lot of their top athletes to NCAA Division One, where they can have their education paid for. The good thing is like a lot of the athletes come back and then they kind of give back to the country and everything. But for the most part, top Canadian athletes, depending on the sport, won't necessarily stay in Canada to pursue an athletic career. They'll move into NCAA Division One. I think part of that then that wasn't necessarily part of the culture in Canada. So in addition to the sports performance stuff, I still had to keep personal training clients. And so I was basically trading dollars for hours while I was doing that. And I met a mentor of mine at this personal training company that I work for. And he was one of the first guys to start an online fitness business like ever. He was like one of the pioneers. His name is Craig Ballantyne. He and I are still very good friends. He's a big productivity and personal development coach now, but he and I were personal trainers together and we were really good friends back in Toronto.
What
And
year was
he knew
this when you started the online?
so I know Craig started his business in 2005 or 2006. And I only know that because that's when my second daughter was born, or my third daughter was born. And around there. And then Craig saw me trading dollars for hours and kind of struggling because I was, I'm always an early riser. So I was waking up at 4:30 in the morning every day to go train a client for 6, 7 and 8, and like do all of that, plus all the sports team stuff. And so Craig saw me doing all of that. And he was like, listen, let me show you what I'm doing because I think this could really benefit you. And so I mentored under Craig and his online business and what he was doing. And he eventually became one of my business partners in one of my online projects. And that's kind of how things got the ball. Like that's how the ball got rolling. And so the online business is how I started. Once my offline income of like personal training and strength coaching started to become equal to my online income, I started to cut off a lot of the offline income, like my one-on-one income, my personal dollars for hours income, and started to grow the online business. And that
But you did
afforded me
that
the freedom to,
purposely. That you did that
yeah.
purposely to eventually. Okay.
Well, yeah, because I was supporting a family of 7, right? I couldn't just like I was in my 20s and my early 30s and I had this like my 20s and 30s were not like the typical 20 and 30-year-old that didn't have a lot of responsibilities, that wasn't married, that they didn't have any kids. Like my back was literally up against the wall every day because I had to provide for my family. And so I had to really take calculated risks in order to mitigate mitigate the risks that were not the financial risks, and do things like really calculated as far as how I was going to make money and stuff like that. The beauty about the online business though was that I started to as I started to get rid of a lot of my my one-on-one income, my personal training income, different opportunities started to come about. So I was really passionate about strength and conditioning, and so I had an opportunity to be the strength and conditioning advisor for the Orlando Magic and a few of their players and stuff like that. That wouldn't have come about without the online business and the connections that I made with the online business. And so I could still do the strength coaching, but now I had this I don't want to say it's automated because you always have to put work in, but I had this way of making money while I was sleeping that was able to offset a lot of the passion projects and things that I wanted to do, which was spend time with my family, take these odd jobs like working with professional athletes, travel, like all of that stuff.
So that's kind of very popular now, right? Kind of everybody wants
Yeah.
to do the online business. It's kind of not the new thing because obviously you've been doing this for a while. A lot of people have. So how have you seen that evolve? I mean, you've been doing it for a while. And now it's just kind of a trend, or do you think it's still there's a lot of room for growth for anybody trying to get into doing online business, or in your case, let's say online coaching?
I think there's so much room for growth. And you and I were talking about it off camera before we press record, but we were talking about having 1,000 true fans. Like that's an
Exactly,
article that was
exactly.
written by a gentleman by the name of Kevin Kelly, who I forget when he started, but he wrote that I think way back in 2010 maybe is when he wrote it. And basically the theory or the philosophy behind 1,000 true fans is like you just need 1,000 people to really believe in what you do and to be a raving fan of yours to have a viable business. Because like as I said, if you can reverse engineer that, say you get 1,000 people to pay you $100 a year, right?
A
That's less
year.
than $10. Yeah, like if you can get 1,000 people to pay you, like that's $100,000 income, right? You can run a business off that. You can feed a family off that. You can do a lot off of that. And so I think that there are 1,000 people for everybody that is on the internet and wants to start an internet-based business. And you could just keep that in mind. Then there really is no competition. Like there's somebody for everybody. Like my voice, somebody who listens to me or somebody who listens to Esteban may not resonate with what I have to say and the way I say it, right? So like there's somebody for everybody. So I think, especially with online business, I think competition is, I think that's false. I
Right.
think
You just
there's
got to
so many
focus
people.
on your niche or really what you're passionate about or really what you have the experience in and just find those people that you can, service, right? And you can
And
help.
say the things that only like the way that you can say it, right? Like say it because everybody can say things uniquely in their own way. Everybody has an interpretation of the world in their unique perspective. So you just have to, and that's what they call authenticity, right? You're being unique to yourself. You just say things the way that you would say it and how you would want to hear it, and people will find you.
Well, and that's interesting. And we're talking about that kind of, adding to what we previously were talking about moving to Costa Rica. One of the ways a lot of people can think about relocating anywhere in the world is, doing and having an online business allows you the flexibility and the ability to do that, right? And you were doing this, in 2000. When did you start the online business? 2007.
I sold my first online product in 2007.
That's awesome. That's
Crazy.
so awesome. And
Yeah.
I love it
I'm
because I
old
love
now.
the
We're old,
yeah.
baby. Yeah.
We're in the same boat, so you can't say if you say you're old, then what does that mean? But Chris, that's cool because, like I said, that's kind of the new world. You've been doing this for a while, that allow you to move to Costa Rica, and something that I truly admire of you, Chris, as a friend. You've been a really good friend, even though we don't see each other all the time. It doesn't matter because every time we see each other, I could definitely sense, we have a great friendship. But I do admire the fact that you've been a family man all your life. And you just mentioned that you're in your 20s, having to feed your family, put everything together, which is very inspiring, not only for me, for anybody. So you have 5 kids, right? And in terms of that, I mean, was that always planned? Was that something you and your wife talked about, or it just kind of happened to have such a large family? I know now it's amazing. I see you with your 5 kids everywhere, but I'm sure it was tough, right? I mean,
It was tough. I
raising
mean,
a big
we like
family,
to
especially in a
say,
different country.
yeah. Well, we like to say that our bookend children were the surprises, right? The first and the last one. Yeah. Yeah. When our daughter was born, she was a surprise. I was 21 when
AJ,
she was born. AJ, yeah.
Nice.
I was 21 when she was born. Roseanne was 19, almost 20 when she was born. So we were very young. And who knew? We didn't know. The one thing when AJ was born was like, we didn't know if we were going to be together, if we were going to stay together. But the one thing that I knew was that this kid deserved a chance. She deserved a chance to have a family. And so that wasn't a question for me. And then from there, it just, yeah, like after a few years of figuring ourselves out and ups and downs and stuff like that, we were like, okay, we're going to do this. Like, I think we want to do this. And then we had Joey. So AJ was born in 1998 and then Joey was born in 2003. So it was about 5 years before we had Joey. And then after Joey came Frankie in 2005. After Frankie came Mikey in 2007. And after Mikey came Joaquin in 2009. And those were our 5 kids. Yeah.
So now, were you trying to get a boy, or was just kind of
No,
how
it
it?
wasn't. I was totally happy. This is a funny story too. I mean, we're going deep in the weeds now, but I had so after Mikey was born, we were pretty much, we conceded. We are just like, okay, this is good. Like I'm happy being a girl dad. Like I love it. The girls are great. I know that they're going to take care of me or whatever. And
So
so
Mikey, sorry,
I,
Mikey was the third
Mikey
daughter,
was a fourth.
fourth
Yeah.
daughter. Oh, okay,
Frankie is number 3. Yeah. Frankie was
okay.
born in 2005. Mikey was 2007.
So after 4 girls, you're like, okay, it's
Yeah.
gonna
Yeah.
me and all the girls, all the 5 girls.
I'll be that guy. Yeah. And so, so I booked a vasectomy. After Mikey was born. And then, so there was a bunch of series of events. The first incident was I was scheduled to get a vasectomy and it was springtime in Toronto and our basement flooded. And so I couldn't go because the basement was flooded. I had to deal with insurance. Like it was literally like, because we live by the beach in Toronto. And so all the water goes, anyway, it doesn't matter. But so I had to cancel that vasectomy. The second one, I think my dad had a heart attack. And so I had to cancel it. It wasn't on the day of vasectomy, but it was one of those things. It was like a family emergency that I had to do it. And then the third time I had it booked. Third, 3 times. The doctor canceled because he got selected to speak at a last second conference, urology conference in like Japan or something like that. So he canceled on me. And so it was just like, what the hell? Like, what's going on? And so it wasn't like I went and rescheduled it, or I was purposely, trying to avoid it, obviously. But then Roseanne ended up getting pregnant with Q and we were just like, and so he was like the miracle child. He was just like, how many times have I tried to get this vasectomy? And like,
Right.
not,
It
and
just
then he
wasn't
came
meant to
about.
be. You were not supposed to get a vasectomy, and Q was
Yeah.
gonna come no matter what. And speaking
So
of
then,
Q, yeah, go ahead.
well, actually, it's funny because then after Q was born, like literally a week after, Roseanne came to me, she put her hand on my shoulder, and I was like, "Baby, it's already booked. I'm going in next week." Like she didn't have to say anything. It was just like it was there, and then snip, snip, and it was done. But yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
That's a great story. Yeah. Speaking of Q, your youngest, when I first met you, he was very small still. He's grown up, so much since I've known you. And now he's a big, big volleyball guy. Huh? He's playing indoor in Canada. Tell me how that
Yeah.
was. I mean, because you had him on the beach. Did you think he was just going to be like a beach volleyball player?
I didn't, what the thing, like one of the things with volleyball, because of my background and everything, like I never wanted to push the sport on any of my kids. And so all of the kids really learn through absorption. And it wasn't until they asked me, can you coach me? Can you teach me more? That I actually inserted myself and started to teach them. And so with Q, it was just like Q, he just grew up with volleyball around him all the time through osmosis. Like I never directly coached him until he was 13. He's 15 right now. So yeah, he started playing beach volleyball. And, with beach volleyball is one of those sports where it's very different from indoor volleyball in that you have to be proficient at all of the skills. You can't just specialize in one particular thing, right? So it was a difficult decision. He grew up on the beach. He was playing beach volleyball. And here in Costa Rica, like they don't, like it's open, right? They don't have age divisions like how they have in Canada or in the US where you play against kids your own age and stuff like that. So when Q started playing competitively, he was just getting beat up by guys that, and nobody wants to lose to a 13-year-old, right? So then these guys are like really giving it their all, trying to like beat him because nobody wants to lose to a 13-year-old. So I think that molded him into the player that he is now. I mean, the same thing with Micaela. It was like she was 13 when she played Elite in the Costa Rican division, like in Open, right? Like she was
I remember that, yeah.
One of the youngest players to ever make Elite. And so for my kids, it was exactly that. But like back to Q, yeah. So there was one day when we were in Toronto, and he was last summer, and he was like, "Dad, I'd really like to try indoor. Can you make
Had
that
he
happen for
ever
me?"
played indoor or just for fun?
Never, never, never,
Never.
never, never put shoes on to play volleyball. Like, and he's like, "It looks like it'd be a lot of fun. I'd like to play." And I said, "Well, I mean, we don't have the facilities in Costa Rica. Like, the only way for you to be able to do that is to like stay here and live with your grandparents." We were in Canada at the time. And he was like, "Okay, like I'd really like to try." So then from there, it was a matter of me trying to help him find a team that would take him, because by the time you're 15, a lot of teams are established. You've got kids that have playing indoor volleyball since they were 10 years old, right?
Yes.
And luckily, he had a good beach volleyball background, and he was scouted on the beach by a coach. And I had no idea who this coach was before. And so the coach said, "Why don't you come out and, we have an open gym for our indoor volleyball team. Why don't you just come out and just play and see how it is?" I didn't know that this coach was the head coach of the number 2 team in Canada for his age group. And so Q went out to this open gym, and we had no idea what that was going to look like. And the coach came up to him, and he was just like, "Kid, like, I know all the kids in your age group. Who the hell are you? Where did you come from?" And so he gave him his whole background story. And then, lo and behold, they signed him. And I spoke to the coach, and I gave him our situation. I said, "Listen, my son, he's living here with his grandparents. I'm not going to be around. So I just want to know that, that this is our situation." That was the first thing. The second thing I said was, I don't want him to feel entitled to play. I want him to earn it. So if you don't feel like he deserves to play because he's not picking things up or he's not learning, you sit his ass on the bench and like let him learn, because it's an elite team. Like, the practices are going to be high level. So if he gets the experience, that's great. He's going to become a better volleyball player just by being around those guys and playing and stuff like that. And the coach was like, "Cool."
That happened to me.
And yeah, right. Like, this is, I mean, University of Hawaii, right? Like,
I went to University of Hawaii, and they were the number 1 team in the nation that year. And I went there, and when I showed up, they redshirted me. And literally, my level of volleyball was not at their level, because I had come to Costa Rica. I had a lot of potential, was a great athlete, jumped really well, but definitely just training with those guys that were the number 1 team in the nation. I was lucky that I could be in the same gym, even at the
right.
beginning, like we would just be picking up balls for the main team. And when they got done training, we would go in there and train. And literally in 1 year, that's where I became like, the volleyball player that I am now, thanks to being around all these like top level athletes. So I totally get it. I mean,
A lot of it too is like people just taking a chance on you, right?
sure.
And that's what this coach did. Like, he stuck his ass on the line, and
Yeah, because he has zero volleyball experience in the beach. It was all beach, but never indoor, right?
yeah, yeah. But there was the coach told me later on that there were just like natural things, like things that he just did naturally. Like, he read the game really well, and that's attributed to the beach game and everything. So yeah, so he made the team, and he sat on the bench for like, the first couple of tournaments, but he was progressing really well, and he ended up being their starting libero. So he worked his
Nice.
way to becoming the starting libero. And we were just in Toronto 2 weeks ago. We were there to witness him on the court when they won the Canadian provincial, or the Ontario provincial championship. So now
Nice.
they're going into nationals ranked number 1 as the number 1 team in the country, and he's their starting libero. So you couldn't have like scripted this any better.
No,
Like, I
that's
don't,
amazing.
I,
That's
and it's,
amazing.
and the beauty about it for me, especially as a dad, was like this is something that he did. This, it wasn't me. There was no influence by me to, I wasn't on the coach like in his ear saying, "Play my son, play my son." It was just like, this was all him. And
And
that's
he
that I
asked you,
told
he
him.
wanted to try it. He actually was the one that came up to you, right? And said, I want to
Yeah,
try playing indoor.
yeah.
That's
So it
good,
was
man. That's
yeah.
good. Well, Q is has a lot of future ahead of him, in volleyball. So I'm really happy to hear that. Now, let me ask you, in terms of your background for fitness, right? Strength training primarily. How important? Well, you've taught that to your kids. Your kids have grown up with that. I mean, even Q, I'm sure that helped him, and being the player he is now, that he's had that background, or just understands the importance of that. And you work with clients now with that, right? Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Yeah. So right now, I primarily I've always focused on kettlebell training, hard style kettlebell training, only because I feel like, especially you and I are, we're in our 40s now, our late 40s. And I think it's really important for guys our age to really try to maintain athleticism. I think that's more important than just being strong, like being able to like lift heavy weights one time. Like I think we have to really try to be able to move well and try to stay athletic. My mantra is lean, strong, athletic. That's what we try to maintain. So what I teach guys is primarily how to train and do it safely using kettlebells in the comfort of their own home so that they don't have any excuses. Oh, I can't get to the gym, or, this gym
Too
membership
busy with
costs too
work.
much. I'm too busy with work. Right. You need one kettlebell and some open space. And I mean, that's it. That's all you need. Yeah. The majority of my business now, as far as my membership site and what I teach guys is exactly that. And then from there, I've developed a community of over 40 men that kind of believe the same thing and have the same type of mentality and mindset that I have. And we talk about different things like obviously nutrition and lifestyle, optimizing sleep, but we also talk about hormone health and marriage and parenting and different men's issues and stuff like that. So kind of evolved into a community of that respect. But the impetus or the quote unquote gateway drug was always like fitness. It was learning how to do this on your own.
And how important is that for, somebody 35 and above, that their fitness part of it, their strength training, like you said, how is important that as a man, also the hormonal part, right? In terms of
Yeah.
how is that going to
Yeah.
affect in your job and, with your, like you said, your family, etc. Let's say they do everything else right, but they don't have their fitness, in check. It's definitely a balance, right? But it's like you said, you start with that part of the fitness and then the other things kind of come along. How do you work it with
Yeah.
that?
I mean, see, the sad thing, it's not necessarily a sad thing, but just the way society works is like our body is our calling card, right? Like when you see a fit guy, you know that he's going to have some sort of discipline, right?
Sure,
You know
sure.
that like he has some form of integrity, because being able to show up and commit to creating like a strong physical body, that you need consistency for that, right? You need discipline. And those are attributes subconsciously that a lot of people admire. And so what I've found with a lot of the guys that I work with is that if you keep your body in check and you start to build that there's a cascading effect of other aspects of your life start to get better. You become more confident. People start to respect you more. You have better relationships. You have better friendships. You have more business opportunities because people see you as somebody who consistently shows up. And I find that the lowest hanging fruit for a lot of guys is that fitness piece. If you can get your body in shape, if you can start becoming physically fit and really taking care of yourself, other aspects of your life start to automatically get better without you having to really focus on them, just because of the type of person that you are when it comes to taking care of your body and taking that part of your life seriously.
Yes, I agree 100%. That's kind of how I've lived my life as well. So I can attest to that. But it's awesome that, you're working with all your clients and help them through that, because a lot of times it's a little mental, right? Kind of understanding
Absolutely.
and putting one foot forward. So somebody that starts working with you, is it like a 3-month process or is it like a yearly process? Like how does your program work with that?
The one-on-one clients that I take, it's a 3-month commitment initially. And then from after the 3 months, we both determine whether or not this relationship is working and if we want to continue working together. And then in addition to that, I have an online community called Athletic and Ageless, where it is like a group of 40-year-old guys. I program them on a monthly basis. We have team meetings every week and we get online. I have this thing called office hours, where I just leave my Zoom room open for 2 hours. And while I'm working, guys will pop in, and if they have any questions or if they just want to say hi and they know I'm there, we'll sit down and chat and talk about stuff. And then every month I'll do like a bigger presentation. Like this last presentation that I did was on an anabolic fasting protocol that I'm experimenting with. And so I wanted to present my findings on that. And so every month I give them like this big presentation. And then we have like an online community and a chat room where everybody gets together. I post videos on there like 2 or 3 times a week of like everything that's going on and all of that. So it's a really good group of close knit guys. And I mean, back then, this is kind of coming full circle to what we started talking about. But this November, I'm scheduling my very first Costa Rican retreat for these guys. So
Awesome.
we have this online community, and there's like a bunch of guys that have wanted to come visit me here in Costa Rica. And so we'll train. And, I have a buddy that's a surf instructor. So, some of them are going to learn how to surf and like just get absorbed into the Caribbean culture and do that for a week with like some good, male bonding, I guess is what you want to say.
Right,
It's like a
right, right.
brotherhood now. Yeah.
Sure, sure. That's great, Chris. I love that. So if somebody wanted to kind of check it out, is there a website or email maybe they can contact you? I'll put that on the description.
The best thing to do is just go to my website and sign up for my newsletter. So if you go to chrislopez.io/newsletter, or just go to chrislopez.io, that's my personal website.
Okay.
And you can find access to my newsletter there. Sign up for my newsletter, and kind of like what I was telling you before, like there's a lot of things that with my way of thinking and the way I do things that you have to really, you have to want it to resonate with you as well. And if it doesn't, no hard feelings, then that's fine. But the best way for me to nurture that relationship with my readers and the people that really like what I do is through email, because there are a lot of barriers with email. It's not like social media where I can just broadcast thing and anybody can look at it. With email, there's some effort. And so I want the people that want to put in a high effort or an effort to want to read my emails, to want to hit reply, to want to click the links in the email. So that's important to me, because then that allows me to really curate my audience almost like a filter of like, so the people that I work with, then they become like, they're uber attracted to my lifestyle and the way I do things and all of that.
Good. I love it. I love it, Chris.
Yeah, man.
So maybe now to wrap up, Chris, thank you for your time, to be here with me and tell your story. And it's really, I think it will help anybody thinking about moving to Costa Rica and has a similar idea. So thanks for that. So what is next for Chris Lopez now that your kids are kind of growing, and I see that they're kind of slowly, are going to leave the nest, right? What have you and Roxanne talked about of your next step? Is Costa Rica going to be it? I think, here you have that home. What is Chris thinking?
Okay, well, our life has changed a lot. Like none of the kids are home anymore. Like Joaquin he's in Toronto, and he just finished that provincial championship.
So they're all not with you anymore?
They're gone. So Rosanna.
So you're there now. All right.
We're here. But this is really funny. And it's timely. Hey, I'll make an announcement. AJ's pregnant.
Wow. Congrats.
She's engaged to be married, but
yes, I knew that.
She's due in November. So Rosanna and I are talking a lot about spending time in Europe now. So the way we see things is, Roseanne has an education project here in Costa Rica. It's not a school. She started an alternative education center here. She opened it 3 years ago, or her own facility 3 years ago. So she's still committed to that. But it looks like, with that being the commitment and my commitment to the volleyball club, we still like to spend the summers in Toronto with our family, because that's when we can all get together. But it looks like it'll be like 1/3 in Europe, 1/3 here in Costa Rica, and then 1/3 in Canada during the summer. Those are kind of like the future plans. So really growing my online business and allowing me to have the freedom of schedule and the autonomy, that's going to be at the forefront of what I'm going to be doing over the next little bit.
That is so cool. Well, congratulations,
Thanks, man.
So the next step, I think, so you're going to be a grandpa pretty soon?
I'm going to be a grandpa.
So
which is crazy. Cool. It's blowing my mind. But yeah.
I know. That's cool. That's cool. I'm sure it's going to be an amazing experience for you. And wow. Cool, Chris. Thank you so much again, for joining me. I need to come visit you. It's been a while since I've been in Puerto Viejo. I couldn't make your last tournament that, you set up, the Caribe Open. But
somebody took your title.
I know. I still I'm waiting for my trophy or a plaque so I can put up here of the Caribe Open.
Yeah. 2 of them. You need 2 of them. Yeah.
2 of them. Yeah. So thanks, Chris. Let's keep in touch, and I'll make it up there soon. Definitely one. Now that it's starting to rain on here. I live in the city, right? You're up in the Caribe. It's been raining there. How's the weather been like recently?
It's been on and off. Like right now it's sunny and hot.
Okay.
Any clouds in the sky. But yesterday was like full rain, like all out.
But usually when it starts raining a lot here in the city, it gets nice up there. So
yeah, it's like it has like an opposite relationship. But yeah. But it's on and off here.
Sounds good, Chris. Thanks a lot. Say hi to everybody in the Caribe.
I will, brother.
And I'll visit you back soon.
Thanks so much for having me, brother. I really appreciate it. This is good. I'm really happy that you got this project going. It's going to be good big things coming for you.
Thanks for all the support. Take care, man.